Yeah!
The 2010s sure was a decade that lasted between January 1st, 2010 and December 31st, 2019. That there is no doubt, and throughout this period, music was definitely made. Some might say that it was the most important decade for music ever in terms of the platform that came about to make it more accessible than ever, the subsequent battling over streaming royalties, and the growth of internet music culture allowing acts to blow up in a totally unprecedented way. And when it came to the charts, calling the 2010s interesting is an understatement. Sure, music revenue has only just started to grow for the first time this millennium, but in terms of records being broken, the methods that impact who can hit number one, and the cluster of critics who offer fascinating insights into these hits, it's been nothing short of entertaining. This leads us to the very video you're watching right now, the top 21 best hit songs of the 2010s. Why 21? I just think it's a pretty cool number, would definitely rank in my top 7 numbers of all time, but before we do so, it's time for the most exciting part of any list video, establishing the rules.
What?
Number 1, for a song to qualify, it must have been released as a single between January 1st, 2010 and December 31st, 2019. So sadly, Tracy Chapman's Fast Car will not be making an appearance in this video, other than just now. Number 2, in addition to that, it must have charted on the US year-end top 100 in that time frame, but seeing as I'm from the UK, for now, any song that ended up on the UK year-end top 100 is also eligible. And lastly, number 3, one song per artist, though I'll not be counting features towards that. So with that out of the way, hello and welcome, I'm Liam, the music reviewer, and to kick things off, let's start this list with some British culture. And at least this time they didn't steal it.
Yeah, we bring the stars out. We bring the women and the cars out. Let's have a toast, a celebration, get a glass out. And we can do this until we pass out.
Finally, some goddamn representation for people like me. Hey, men that are 5'8" need some love too. For real though, if any song gets a pass based on nothing but pure unfiltered nostalgia, then it's Pass Out. Tinie Tempah was sort of a big deal around the time this dropped. He was basically the British B.O.B. in that he made his name on cheesy raps and big collaborations, but then just seemed to disappear all of a sudden though. Instead of getting into conspiracy theories, Tempah just changed his focus to grime. And oh boy is that aforementioned cheese evident on here, though most of it works really well in a comedic sense, like bragging about having so many clothes that you have to store them at your auntie's, or saying that you've never been to Scunthorpe. Another thing you have to bear in mind is that this was a song folk would crowd around a table in the lunch hall to Bluetooth to one another, so regardless of its quality via contemporary lens, it was an anthem that came out of seemingly nowhere to make teenagers go wild and Jesus bracelet sales skyrocket. Like I said before, a lot of nostalgia for this song. After all, it was the first single I ever bought on my iPod Touch. Just hearing that opening and the drum and bass climax has me feeling like a pair of chinos are about to manifest on me. If this song doesn't make you want to post a like for a rating date status on Facebook, then I don't know what will. Florence and the Machine, not a little known name by any means, but she's definitely had more success in the UK than she did over in the States, which is shown by achievements like headlining Glastonbury in 2015. To get to that point, you have to have achieved some amount of success and momentum, as well as doing some voodoo magic to ensure Dave Grohl breaks his leg, so it's no surprise to hear that Florence was omnipresent on the charts, most notably with her debut record Lungs in 2009. The best performing track on here was just as inescapable, that being the track You've Got the Love, which is an already lovely song made all the better by Florence's 2010s Brit performance. Florence looks a little bit different.
You got the love. Who's got the love? You got the love. Who's got the love? That's right.
I know for a fact that I used some dodgy YouTube to MP3 converter back in the day to get this on my wee slide phone. I was utterly obsessed with You Got the Dirty Love, and I think it was just because this mashup of two great songs sounds really pleasant. 10 years later though, and I think why I like this song to the extent that I do is the same kind of reason why I eventually ended up loving a genre like Plunderphonics, and that's just how these two different songs complement each other so well. On the surface, having a grime or a UK hip hop song performed on top of this beautiful orchestra may not seem that unorthodox considering what contemporary acts like Dave and Stormzy have done, but At the time it was refreshing. Even now I still think it's impressive how well both tracks just bounce off each other. Speaking of bouncing off each other, it's the lyrical side of things that I love the most about this track. Dizzy rapping about the current state of Britain as it dived headfirst into recession, listing off all of his concerns with Florence's answer of "You got the love" feeling not ignorant or idyllic, but more "we've got what it takes to soldier on." Performed at the start of the decade, before all of the austerity that would be unleashed on the UK in 2010 and onwards, it was a sentiment that would only become more important as the decade continued. Moving on, we're going to continue this list with... That's a bit weird. What's Paul Thomas Anderson's 1999 cult film doing on this list? Oh... Wrong script.
In New York, I've been the rock. Had it in my sock. Used to Savvy Rock. Running from a cop. Shooting at the ops.
Now, putting Playboi Carti on this list is going to be a bit of a shock to some people, least of all me, who back in 2018 had Die Lit listed as one of the worst albums of that year. Thankfully, I've since seen the light and came around to Carti, but having him in the running for this list still shocked me a fair bit. As it turns out, this track had a bit of a viral status. Some YouTuber used it in one of their videos and it took off from there. Thankfully, unlike other viral trap songs of the time that found refuge on Vine and the likes, Magnolia has the psychedelic foundations that would go on to make him one of the decade's most interesting rappers and artists in general. Had this been a Die Lit cut like Lean for a Rio or Fell in Love, then it would be a lot higher, but I still think Magnolia has aged pretty well and holds up pretty well, especially when you consider everything that Carti has achieved since this song. Now, I know I got a bit of heat for including Seven Rings in my most overhated songs of the 2010s list, and for anyone that I annoyed or let down by including that song on there, I'm so sorry.
I want it, I got it. I want it, I got it.
I'm just messing with you.
Thank you, next, thank you, thank you, next. I'm so fucking grateful for my ex.
The fourth most streamed artist of the decade, and the only one from that top 5 to make an appearance on this list. If the 2010s were dominated by any female artist, then it would probably be Adele or Beyonce, but Ariana definitely made some amount of noise. Despite that streaming achievement and breaking numerous Billboard records, the 2010s haven't been a smooth ride, not even close when you bear in mind the Manchester Arena bombing that she touched upon with a record sweetener, and then the passing of ex-partner Mac Miller, which would have been rough on its own without hundreds of thousands of people blaming you for his death. You never fail to disappoint me, internet. From the ashes of this pain rise Thank You Next, a song that I was initially concerned about considering how it came out just 3 months after the release of our last album, but seeing as it's on this list, you know that was a problem that I soon overcame. I do love the minimal yet totally addictive instrumental. It's got a kind of glitz and glamour appeal that would set the stage for the maximalist nature of Ariana's upcoming album, but it's lyrics on here that really made me warm up to it. I've had a few conversations where people have said the chorus could be taken as nippy or rude, but I think the overwhelming majority would agree with me when I say that it's an earnest sentiment boiled down into a sassy, grande, or well, short fashion. Seeing as this also operates as a breakup anthem as well as an independence one, it's refreshing to hear Ariana look back on relationships to evaluate what she learned from it, if anything, and following that up with a verse about meeting herself and improving emotionally gets a big ol' thumbs up from me. Ariana had a lot of contenders for this list. There was Breathing, No Tears Left to Cry, Into You, God's a Woman, but when I thought about what song I found myself humming the most and which one had the biggest impact on me, it couldn't not be Thank You Next. Now, I hate to go all 2017 YouTube on you here, but it's time.
Put your pussy fingers to the moon!
Girls, what y'all trying to do? 24 karat magic in the air.
Bruno Mars' evolution over the 2010s has been nothing short of entertaining. He started off with some nice guy whining tailor-made for adverts, produced one of the worst runs of singles in recent memory, showed a brief glimmer of hope, went back to his usual rigmarole before finally getting it right with 24K Magic. There's no two ways about it, Bruno's been quite baity, paying homage to a bygone decade, but there's also no denying that he sounds absolutely tremendous on top of it all. Despite how much it owes to 80s synth-funk, 24K Magic is a labour of love as opposed to Bruno Mars just playing on your mum and dad's heartstrings as he did with the Police's, his 2012 track, Locked Out of Heaven. Whether it's a omnipresent Vice City shimmer, Bruno's uber confident but totally earned demeanour, or that glorious talkbox opening, 24K is as ice cold as a Greggs sausage roll. It's evident he's just going to keep rebooting every decade and movement of music, as shown by Finesse, which had that whole New Jack Swing feel to it all, which means by the year 2035 we're going to get Bruno Mars doing some nightcore music, and I for one could not be more excited about that prospect. Now, if 2016 was known for anything other than it was the unfortunate deaths of so many beloved figures, I could spend the remainder of this video listing off. The music related ones that come to mind are Bowie and Prince and Leonard Cohen and Jay-Z. Oh yeah, because of I do reckon if I had omitted Beyonce from this list, then I would just be totally obliterated by the Hive. So this might seem like some kind of damage control, but I will stir the pot a little bit and say that had Lemonade not dropped, then Beyonce would be nowhere near this list.
Why you booing me? I'm right.
The first half of the 2010s wasn't lackluster for Beyonce in terms of success, but I just do not care for any of the singles she dropped. Love on Top is solid. I like the bit in Drunken Love where it says like Jay-Z's a weeaboo.
Now eat the cake, anime, said eat the cake, anime.
But it wasn't until Lemonade that I was properly taken aback. Sorry just doesn't hold back. Beyonce just letting loose at her unfaithful partner in a way where it feels like I'm transported back to my childhood and I'm at my pal's house and I'm just witnessing them getting told off by their mum, sitting there just completely awkward, not staring, but still listening pretty attentively. In fact, it's more accurate to call this a therapy session with how intimate it is in its anguish and anger. The accompanying track production throughout definitely helps make this a clapback anthem, but its outro where the song goes from good to great, the arrangement just unraveling much like the relationship in question is. The way she sounds so intimidating and confident while delivering it so effortlessly, almost calmly, is such an impressive touch to me that almost borders on unsettling. Had Don't Hurt Yourself been eligible for this list, and it would definitely be a bit higher. That song just rips and tears. But Sorry is one of the most iconic songs ever for one of the biggest zeitgeist stories of the 21st century.
You better call Becky with the good hair.
Speaking of relationships, Rihanna found herself working with one of the biggest rappers on the planet, talking about that very subject, and that song just happens to be my 15th best hit song of the 2010s.
Just gonna stand there and watch me burn.
No, not that one.
Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty.
Not that one either.
Oh, nah, nah, what's my name? Oh, nah, nah, what's my name?
Almost, you're almost there.
'Cause if you let me, here's what I'll do. I'll take care of you.
So I was telling a little fib earlier when I said no one else in that top 5 stream artist list was making an appearance. I'm just a sucker for unreliable narrators. In fact, Drake probably had more contenders for this list than anyone, which I'm not too proud to admit considering just how much he has abused the charts, for a lack of a better term. You don't release something like Scorpion to showcase your artistic merit is all I'll say on that. Sure, if you chuck so much out then there's something bound to stick, but I'd like to give Drake a bit more credit than that, at least before he unashamedly started tailoring the stuff for the charts. Hold On, We're Going Home, Marvin's Room, Headlines, Back to Back, Make Me Proud, all good to great songs. Take Care takes a cake though, and sure, a lot of that comes down to the excellent production which samples Jamie XX, which in turn samples Gil Scott Heron, but that would only really be a problem if there wasn't anything of note to be found other than that on this song, which just isn't the case at all. Drake singing here is genuinely super nice, and that's pretty essential for the kind of pining, sensitive vibe he's going for on this track. He's not too lethargic either, going back and forth between the smooth and the speedy to add some depth. Rihanna's appearance may be limited to a few lines, but it's all very suitable, delivered with heart and in a way that just ties into the ethereal feel of the song. Drake would try to repeat this success again with the song Too Good featuring Rihanna with mixed results, but this is definitely a case where the original is better, or well, the original that samples a remix which samples a cover of the original. That's really hurting my head. I'm just going to take a quick drink just now.
Made this here with all the ice on in the booth. At the gate outside, when they pull up, they give me loose.
I think in terms of just sheer scope, Sicko Mode is the biggest hit of the 2010s. I know that might seem like a bit of a basic take, maybe even an objectively false one when you look at sales, but there's a song sounding rich because of how dense the production is, and then there's a song sounding rich in the way Sicko Mode does. It's some guillotine levels of rich, but at least in this context, I mean it in the most positive way possible. I would try to create some sort of museum metaphor here about being scared to even breathe in case it knocks over this fragile, expensive urn of a track, but Sicko Mode does not feel brittle in the slightest. The progression is what most people are infatuated by, and I'm no different. If a song can make you forget that it's over 5 minutes long, then it's doing something very right. I see some folk complain about Drake's closing verse, but I'm definitely of the opinion that despite sounding so laid back and chill, he somehow makes taking Xanax to fall asleep in a plane sound like a flex, which goes to show the kind of form he can be on when he tries. Travis Scott will probably spend the rest of his career trying to recreate the success and the magic of Sicko Mode, and you can't really blame the guy for doing so. This is just a blockbuster kind of tune, which is only accentuated by that 3-act structure. I would pay a extortionate admission fee to experience it for the umpteenth time. And in terms of verse rankings, Travis's verse, Drake's second verse, and then the first Drake verse, but they're all pretty good.
Got these other bitches shook, yeah. Everybody get your motherfucking...
Now, there is a reason I had to enforce a rule about one song per artist, and that's because some have really dominated the charts this decade with some incredible tracks. Take Drake, that guy I was just complaining about for the past 5 minutes, because no matter how much I had to test some of his practices and just how unruly his projects have become as of late, he could have had a handful on this list on top of the ones we've mentioned thus far if that rule wasn't in place. The next artist we're going to talk about is no different, and if anything, they're actually more successful now than they were whenever this song came out, which just felt impossible considering just how popular they were back then. But yeah, after much deliberation, it was a song about numbness that just got to my heart like very few hit songs this decade did.
I can feel my face when I'm with you, but I love it,
There have been a fair few songs that try to use romantic subtext in order to talk about addiction. In 1975, for all their many flaws, have struck gold with this formula before, but Can't Feel My Face has been one of the most successful songs when it comes to this formula.
I only call you when it's half-past, but the only time that I be by your side.
Okay, we've got ourselves a little switcheroo here. While I love these songs pretty equally, what the Hills aims for and succeeds in doing interests me far more. While in recent years Abel has tried to tap into his more sensitive side, back in 2015 he seemed content rocking his bad boy demeanour, and with the Hills even amplifying it to a villainous extent. That cinematic backing that the dirty bass continuously perforates, and The Weeknd's unhinged delivery during the verses really does help to create this borderline horror vibe to this song. It's like if Norman Bates' vices lied more in narcotics and women that weren't his mum.
Turn down for what? Turn down for what?
I know a lot of people will pinpoint different songs for being the main culprit in music getting more and more depressed and sinister, but with The Hills, that that ominousness isn't just an outfit, but embedded into its DNA. While it's only floating on the precipice of the top 10, in terms of tone and iconicness, this decade owes so much to The Hills. So there are a fair few songs that are only included as honourable mentions and not on the main list for a variety of reasons. The main one being overplay. If you've worked in retail before, you'll know how a good song can become absolute torment after doing a few shifts. But there's one song that had that challenge, overcame it, is on this main list. And if you've not checked it out, then you really should listen to this single when you get the chance. Sound of the Summer.
Like the legend of the Phoenix.
I don't know what robot devil Daft Punk sold their soul in order to become these hit-making machines, but it'd be hard to argue that it hasn't been worth it. The duo would have totally been within their rights to not put out Random Access Memories, their first non-soundtrack album in 8 years, considering they'd established their legacy through the late 90s and noughties with French House Gold like Around the World and One More Time. Shout out to that Tron Legacy soundtrack. But not only did 2013 see the return of Daft Punk, it also saw them making new disco music. It was a bit of a gamble considering what they'd become renowned for, but there's no doubt that it paid off. I'm sure there are those who would disagree, say that the magic is worn off after hearing it absolutely everywhere throughout 2013, maybe even more about it being too repetitive, which for that one, I think we just have a total clash of heads and opinions about what makes Daft Punk so much fun, because I think they take repetition and just use it masterfully, like on Around the World, One More Time and Robot Rock and Get Lucky. I still find this song to just be an absolute delight. The guitar segment from Niles Rodgers alone is enough to make me groove about like I've got squirrels in my pants, but Pharrell's smooth as butter vocals, the hi-hats, the opening chords, everything is just fine-tuned perfection. And that's without me even mentioning the final third where that trademark Daft Punk vocoder comes into play. At the time of recording, it's been around about 7 years since we got new Daft Punk material, but if you have to wait a few more years to get something just as good as Get Lucky, then I don't mind being a little bit patient.
Boom, boom, boom.
Sound in my heart, the beat goes on and on and on and on. Boom, clap, you make me feel good. Come on to me now.
You don't need me to ramble on for 20 minutes about how Charli XCX evolved using some fancy Premiere video effects. She's one of the most forward-thinking musicians currently working, producing hit after hit after hit. When I say hit after hit after hit, I do mean critically, because commercially none of the singles that emerged from those albums were ever quite as popular as Boom Clap was. That being said though, it's not like Charli only started to become interesting once she started working alongside A.G. Cook and Sophie, as shown by this very song. Despite being the lead single for a film soundtrack revolving around a tragic romance between two teens living with cancer, Boom Clap is one of the most joyous, life-affirming songs I've ever heard. Opening with those sucker punch drums and synths that I can only describe as wibbly wobbly, Boom Clap establishes its playfulness and runs with it all the way through, Charli spinning her tale about a blossoming relationship by using the titular Boom Clap as an onomatopoeia to really immerse you into this butterfly in your tummy inducing connection. I still get chills every time that second chorus opens and we get nothing but twinkly keys. It just feels like time has came to a complete standstill and nothing else matters. Such a delight. The big question though is, will you be able to listen to this song without thinking of this tweet? We're in the top 10 now, and one of the most frustrating aspects when creating this list, other than knowing that I had days and days of copyright fights to face when I actually get around to uploading this video, is that there would be some songs that were quite popular but just missed out on qualifying for this list. Take Latch by Disclosure for example, an absolute banger of a song that was and still is a staple of any worthwhile party, but sadly it only reached 101 on the UK singles year end chart for 2012. At first I thought this song was solely saved by Disclosure's home country, showing it some much deserved love, but believe it or not, Latch actually performed better in the US, reaching number 28 on the year end chart for 2014. Will you want to put it down to Sam Smith mania, or just a taste for something new after years of this build drop music that had flooded the charts? It's clear that Latch had enough going on that it managed to strike a chord with so many people. Mainly I think it comes down to the synergy on display. I don't loathe Sam Smith, neither do I love them, but their soulful performance on here and the sheer Tommy Gun burst of passion in the chorus works like an absolute charm. Disclosure makes sure they're paying their dues too with this bubbly composition, murky and dreamy like during the verses, but aptly vibrant when the chorus kicks in. I love how they've added a ceiling of sorts so that as Sam Smith's vocals ascend, they bounce off it and pan around the room, giving it a real beautiful spectral type gloss. Most of the dance music I loved growing up hasn't aged the best like Calvin Harris, but I still find myself unable to separate myself from Latch, just as alluring as it was when I heard it for the first time 8 years ago. Despite being relatively young, being in your mid-20s on the internet looks like you're knocking on heaven's door and are going to start talking about a time where movies were in black and white, but I did know the epic highs and lows of high school during the 2010s. One of those highs was definitely goofing around in the music department, even years after I wasn't taking music as a subject. Me and some pals just go into the rooms when no one else was there and just play about with instruments. Mainly the glockenspiel or the plinky plonk had a lot of different names, and you can imagine what kind of stuff we would be playing on that, like Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen and Africa by Toto. And during the peak of this goofing off was a song that if you're around about the same age as me, bit younger, bit older, then this might be a track that you used to know. I know it's meant to be pronounced Gautier, but the Scotamese reading it in a certain way, so Gautier it remains. And speaking of the man himself, lovely wee musician, he got huge off the back of this track, dropped Making Mirrors, released one more single, and then just disappeared. 9 years of near radio silence should be enough for an artist I'm only somewhat familiar with to fade out of my memory, yet here's somebody that I used to know still permanently attached to me like a piece of chewing gum underneath a bus seat. Featuring New Zealand's top 3 export, Kimbra, this is a track that seems pretty barren at first. The aforementioned glockenspiel and the guitar make up a majority of the composition, but boy do Gautier and Kimbra eradicate any doubt that the song is lackluster. I can still remember lying in my bed after a bad day at school, hearing that second chorus for the first time, Kimbra and Gautier, spirits bursting out of them and floating around the room as they viscerally attempt to untangle themselves after a less than amicable breakup. It just blew my wee mind. Even after all the YouTube comedians attempted to goof on it, this track never lost its grip on me. The 2010s have been home to a lot of back and forth male-female collaborations like I Know What You Did Last Summer, Perfect, Marvin Gaye and Get It On, all just as egregious as the last. When it comes to somebody that I used to know, the equation is perfect, the results are incredible. Despite what its title may entail, almost a decade later, I'm nowhere near close to forgetting just how incredible this song is.
All of the lights.
2020 saw My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy celebrate its 10th anniversary, and no matter what side you fall on, there's no doubting the sheer weight this album carries. Power may be the best known cut, and Runaway arguably the centrepiece of the entire project, but when it comes to sales, All the Lights was the runaway hit. I had a bit of a turnaround with this song, which I call a No One Else situation, which is named after the Weezer song from their debut album. That track used to always strike me as a bit of an incel sexist anthem until a few years ago, where the intent, which is to reflect just how toxic nerd culture can be, and the song after on that album kind of goes to ridicule that character on no one else. When that all became clear, I just had a newfound love for it. So while the glitz and glamour of All of the Lights was always jaw-dropping, the lyrics used to hold this song back for me, and I'm not just talking about the MJ line, though there is enough questionable hip-hop MJ lines from this decade to make a separate video about it. It was this tale of a man beating his girlfriend, going to jail, and coming back seemingly surprised that people hated him. It always just stood out to me as really tone-deaf and odd. That was until I finally got it. The man is Kanye, obviously, but beating his girlfriend actually isn't about domestic abuse, but the Taylor VMA situation where he was sent to jail, aka judged by the public and the press, and when he returns home and sees someone replacing him, it isn't a new man, but a new generation of rappers, many of whom were influenced by Kanye. The second verse goes into more detail about the embarrassment his actions brought, and how he's scared to see the genre he loves go on without him. I feel like such a dafty taking all of that so literally, because now that the metaphor is all unravelled, I just think it's so neat. So there we have it, All of the Lights. Hello? Oh, you want me to repeat after you? Okay. Liam, I'ma let you finish, but Taylor Swift had the 7th best hit song of the 2010s.
So it's gonna be forever, or it's gonna go down in flames. You can tell me when it's over, if the high was worth the pain.
The stars really do be aligning as we go from one track revolving around media backlash and assumptions to another, both artists having their own relationship that I just touched upon. Instead of just going over what has happened, albeit in an interesting fashion, Taylor decides to play up her image of being a serial dater. And when I say she plays up, she plays it up. Without even mentioning the music video, which in its own right is one of the best of the 2010s, Blank Space is ironically full of details that make it really shine, exasperating her envy, the darling I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream line, that goat chorus, those airy acapellas and sims. This isn't just a few listens kind of dealio. I've been coming back time and time again for over half a decade. Taylor tried to touch on this topic of assumptions and haters again with the far more popular but far weaker single Shake It Off, but when it comes to 1989 and its standout track, it's gotta be this.
But I got a blank space, baby, and I'll write your name.
There have always been icons that have defined years, even a decade for younger generations. You've got The Cure during the 80s, Nirvana in the 90s, along with your hip hop and Britpop acts, a whole host of ones in the 90s, including MCR, and the 2010s is just chock full. And if you were going to ask me, Liam, who's going to be one of the defining icons of the 2020s? Duh. Before I even get the chance to start explaining why I like this song so much, I need to go on the defensive a bit, because boy, were there people out for Billie Eilish's Blood when this song dropped last spring. The nature of the lyrics here were seen by some as problematic, to the point it wasn't uncommon for a co-producer and, more importantly, brother Phineas to be called everything from creepy to manipulative. Gonna give my air quotes fingers a bit of a rest here, but I don't really get this argument from some people. I find it to be quite reminiscent of people that I've had conversations with. I know it sounds like a total straw man, but people who have told me they don't like Fight Club because it's hyper masculine, and I'm kind of like, that's kind of the point. But when I think of creepy or intimidating figures in music, chances are it's because they've done creepy and intimidating things in real life. Whereas Billie Eilish, a teenage girl, manages to get under my skin just by saying she might do something. She might do some of that stuff. I just find that impressive. Now that the tangent's over, we can get into Bad Guy itself, which is just a treat and a half. That playful lead synth, the finger snaps, that licking Billie herself. People have said she constantly sounds exhausted or one note, but I'm just not getting that at all. Least of all from Bad Guy, where her playfulness is clear as day. The frets she makes, the way her voice echoes at the 2:15 mark, and that absolutely charming.
Duh.
Is she subdued? Maybe, but is she lethargic? Far from it. This video is to kind of serve as a retrospective on how great popular music has been in the 2010s, but it's also to kind of act as a beacon of what the future has in store for us, and if Billie Eilish here is going to serve as one of the front runners for that, we are in safe hands. You really thought I was going to discuss this song and not bring up the outro? It's like those scenes from Under the Skin where ScarJo lures in and captures her prey. Intimidating, suffocating, and absolutely deserving of the Bad Guy title. With the single since Bad Guy proving to be just as good, it's clear that Billie's staying power is just as strong as her ability to piss off dads worldwide. If you're not familiar with my channel, which chances are you probably aren't, you won't remember a video I put out at the start of this year called Predicting Music in 2020, which included such highlights as declaring that Bernie Sanders would be the president. So I'm just going to ignore that, or else I'm going to get sad. But if there's anyone else on this platform who is as bad at predicting things as me, and it's definitely Todd in the Shadows.
Charlie XCX is, I guess, the version of Lorde who isn't too good for pop music. I suspect Lorde's career will take her far away from pop music. I was way off!
I'm waiting for it, that green light. 'Cause on the aisle, come get my things, but I can't let go. I'm waiting for it, that green light.
I invested right into the Lorde stock when Royals came about. While it's probably one of our weakest songs nowadays, that doesn't come to it not aging well, and it's more down to the fact that she's just that consistently great. Melodrama is one of the defining albums of the decade, whether you like it or not, and having Greenlight as a lead single definitely goes some way to establish that. There's just a great pace to this song, starting off with those simple but no less powerful opening piano chords before some swirling synths come into the fray, all leading up to that superpowered right hook left jab that is the chorus. That chorus, by the way, easily one of the best of the charts has had the pleasure of hosting. All the little details on here only go to lure me in further, such as the light echoes of Liar and some of her desperate inflections during the climax. It all plays into this visceral image of heartbreak while not threatening its independence anthem status. Lush, triumphant, fun as all hell. Pure Heroin may have had a moody opener that makes an impression, but Tennis Court looks like a chocolate bar compared to this tub of heroes. One of the best lead singles of the decade, and just one of the best songs of the 2010s in general. Just do not ask me about the Lena Dunham Lorde conspiracy, please. Just don't.
I'm waiting for it, that green light. I want it.
So, hot take, but the 2010s were pretty damn bleak. Terrorism on the rise, fascist populism on the rise, hell, sometimes both happened at the same time. That's not even to get into the myriad of other horrible things that happened, which would take up a list of their own, but I bring this up as it does tie into how the charts try to reflect this. Earlier on in the decade, most hits tended to revolve around ignoring your problems, parting away, literally just being happy, which had something to do with the economic situation at the time. And as I touched upon earlier on in this video, there was a shift to a more cynical, dark, moody sound, and some will argue who or what caused it. Most have been included on this list, like Drake and Lorde and The Weeknd. Who started it all will be up for debate until the end of time. The real question really should be who did it the best, and here's my answer.
I don't really care if you cry. I don't really shouldn't ever lie. Should've saw the way she looked me in my eyes. She said, baby, I am not afraid to die.
For someone who doesn't seem to actively go out their way to get into the drama, Lil Uzi Vert found himself involved in two of the biggest music discussions / controversies of the 2010s, the previously mentioned dark music turn and mumble rap. I sigh not because I hate it, I mean look who's at number 4 here, it's due just to how slanderous a term it became, every old head eager to slate a new era of rappers because they just couldn't help but channel their inner old man yells at cloud energy.
Chill.
It's a lazy term that thankfully has been reclaimed by rappers like Playboi Carti and Lil Uzi Vert, but god was that like one of the most mind numbing and frustrating conversations of the 2010s. It's up there with like Kanye West discography rankings. And I bring up this frustration because labeling something mumble rap so that you can have some get out of jail free card when you don't get it is even more annoying when the music in question is something like EXO Tour Life that defined the 2010s for me. Some of what I have to say may hit differently depending on how old you are, but you were definitely alive in 2017, and so you'll just know how downtrodden that year felt. I have great memories of that year, sure, but it did feel like we're all processing the piles of bad news we were just served the year before. So when EXO Tour Life came along, a song that just embodies a state of exhaustion and numbness in a way that no one really has for me, yeah, I knew it was pretty special. I love the production on here. It has all the classic trap trademarks, but the haziness of it all and the percussion are just such neat little touches that rub me the right way. And then there's the hook itself, Push Me to the Edge, All My Friends Are Dead, and the way that Lil Uzi Vert delivers it. Oh, just, I'm gonna use up my quota here of one chef's kiss per video. Emo music has always been such a cathartic genre, so it makes total sense that Lil Uzi Vert's attempt at emo rap has just been an utter success. That, yeah, I've been coming back to this song time and time again. It is just resisting the chef's kiss again, resisting it. Brilliant song, brilliant song. If you were to pinpoint an epicenter of popularity and influence during the early 2010s, then it would have to be the Saturday night talent shows like The X Factor, American Idol, and the respective spin-offs, which managed to maintain and in some places improve upon their ratings of the previous decade. Now, while there may have been some big and noteworthy names from these shows, I love nothing more than having my can of unspecified fizzy juice and laughing at some of the candidates who just fizzled out in really funny ways. Let's look at some just now.
No, you wanna hear some metal? You wanna hear me roar?
It's hard, stakes are getting higher. No love for free, man. It costs if you're the buyer.
Oh my god. We are not going to see her again. She will definitely not produce one of the best hit songs of the 2010s, one of the most infectious songs of the decade. Definitely not. Anyway, on an unrelated note, I'm going to take a mouthful of this fizzy juice just now.
Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe.
A lot of songs I've mentioned thus far have had me nostalgic, but none have me donning the Matt Murdock red tinted glasses more than Call Me Maybe. That's not to imply that the song is only great to those who were present for its boom back in 2012, far from it, but god does it make me all warm reminiscing about that time where it was literally impossible to escape this track. You had the music video being pushed regularly, the inevitable backlash, and waves of think pieces, and then there was a many parodies. Is that Obama? It was so much simpler back then, wasn't it? But pain and freezer times aside, and to quote a great man, Call Me Maybe is like an onion. The layers of greatness to it are just splendid. Carly's playfulness, the hot guy mowing, that thrilling instrumentation, the buried but noticeable Postal Service era synths, the hot guy mowing, that piercing weighty guitar riff, the hot guy mowing, and one of the most colossal hooks of the past 10 years. It's debatable whether Carly Rae Jepsen could be considered a one-hit wonder after this track. She did get another year-end hit with I Really Like You, but nothing else has quite made a mark like Call Me Maybe did. She's hardly missing in action or underground nowadays though, having a fairly notable career with some of the most critically acclaimed albums of the 2010s and a healthy listener base. Regardless of what you want to call her, you've got to put some respect on Carly Rae Jepsen's name and Call Me Maybe. It is one of the best hit songs of the decade, one of the best songs of the decade, and not only that, it was in one of my top 5 Always Sunny episodes, so it is literally flawless, and if you disagree with me, then we're gonna have a fight, and oh, I'm gonna mess you up.
So call me maybe.
Right, before we get into the top 2, I should probably have a drink of that juice or water or whatever I said I was gonna have earlier on, because my throat is aching.
Oh, that was more.
Frank,
Headshot.
Frank,
Sit down.
Frank,
Stand up.
Frank,
Pass out.
Frank,
Wake up.
Frank,
Fade it.
Frank,
Fade it.
Frank.
Nah, I done grew around some people living their life in bottles. Granddaddy had the golden flash, backstroke every day in Chicago.
While sales don't equate to quality, it was quite heartwarming to be able to include Kendrick Lamar on this list, an artist who will undoubtedly go down as one of, if not the best artist of the decade, thanks to not one, but two back-to-back records that have become hip-hop classics in just the space of a few years. 14 platinum singles, 13 Grammys, and a soundtrack for what was, at the time, the 9th highest grossing film ever made. It was clear that the world at large during the 2010s was paying attention to Kendrick Lamar, but when it came to swimming pools, it feels like a lot of people heard them but weren't really listening. Being someone that was going to parties around the time this song was blowing up, I can assure you that this song fell on deaf drunk ears. Folk hear the chorus and think it's just a hazy Little John type club anthem that's a perfect soundtrack for ordering in a tray of shots. It was pretty ingenious to make swimming pools a sort of wolf in sheep's clothing, because despite its partying reputation, this song has done more for hitting home the dangers of alcohol and dependency on it better than any PSA. It helps that it's delivered with more finesse, and those after school specials, that first verse is just jam packed with incredible lines, and the second verse would be many's first experience of Kendrick's trademark nasally delivery used to act as his conscience. Always loved how this verse just pans around. You can almost envision like a floating mini Kendrick head circling you as he wants you to stop while we have the chance.
Okay, now open your mind up and listen to me, Kendrick. I'm in your conscience. If you do not hear me, then you will be history, Kendrick.
Swimming pools is a cautionary tale that never comes across as virtuous, probably because it's evident that it's something Kendrick has struggled with, as shown on the track You from To Pimp a Butterfly. Alcohol, the cause and solution of all of life's problems, could be a great way for me to summarise this song. It could also just be another way for me to shoehorn a Simpsons reference into all of my videos. You can take your pick on that one. So before we get to my number one pick, let's go have a look at some of my honourable mentions.
Fade it.
Frank,
Fade it.
Frank.
And like it hard with my baby. I just left the mall, I'm getting fly with my baby.
Hashtag bring back Fetty Wap.
I hope you're somewhere praying.
There are a few songs that I omitted from this list that I'm hugely nostalgic for, but didn't want to praise since that would ultimately lead to praising Dr. Luke. With that in mind, Praying by Kesha is one of the most powerful songs to ever grace the charts. The only reason I didn't put it on the actual list is a rather common one, which is just due to how overwhelming it can be, leading to me rarely coming back to it, but when I do, damn, did it still hit just as hard as it did the first time.
I got the horses in the back, horse stock is attached. Head is matted black, got the bushes black to match.
Time will only tell if Old Town Road will continue to be just as charming as it was when it came out of nowhere in 2019, or if it will just be seen as a novelty of the time. For now though, I still think this is a whole lot of fun.
You could have had a bad bitch, not committal. Help you with your career, just a little.
The next three honourable mentions purely ended up here because of Overplay, which I mentioned earlier on, but I would be a very, very silly boy if I were to omit Lizzo from this list in some fashion.
Can we go back? This is the moment, tonight is the night, we'll fight till it's over.
Much like when I'm making my pasta, I love a good dollop of cheese, and Can't Hold Us has that, as well as some pretty cool production.
Don't believe me, just watch.
2014 to 2015 was my first year of being able to go to clubs, and God knows if there was anything more guaranteed than finding powdery residue on top of the toilet. It was this song playing. Again, Overplay definitely killed my enjoyment a tad, but this still slaps a fair bit.
Coming down, one love, two mouse, one love, one house, no shirt, no blouse.
In the same way songs like Savage and Old Town Road owe their success to TikTok, Splitter Weather owes a lot to Tumblr, but unlike Super Wholock and that user who stole bones from cemeteries, this has aged pretty well. There was a time where I thought this song sucked. I can now tell you that Teenage Me was an absolute imbecile.
Seasons change and our love went cold. Feed the flag 'cause we can't let go.
I absolutely hated this song when I first heard it. The vibrato Post Malone does on here just felt like a power tool penetrating my ears, but somehow I've really warmed up to it. I know having it just as an honourable mention will put me in some folks' bad books, but at least I like it. Speaking of Post Malone.
You'll be left in the dust unless I stuck by you. You're the sunflower. I think your love would be too much.
The last honourable mention, and yeah, I was having a hard time figuring out whether or not I should put this on the proper list, since I do think in some way my love for this song is influenced by how great I find Into the Spider-Verse. Regardless, this song just makes me feel at peace, and I find it near impossible not to sing along when it comes on. So with my best hits of the 2000s list, my build up to number 1 had me kind of detailing my transition from little primary school dweeb to slightly bigger high school dweeb, all the things I had to leave behind, and how actually I didn't really have to, which was, yeah, watch that video after this one, it's quite good if I'm being honest. Had my little younger self known what the 2010s had in store for them, oh my god, when it would come to bloody college and university, oh, they would be just... Actually, no, college and university were actually quite fun, if I'm being perfectly honest. Learned a lot of stuff, made some great friends. It was just actually a really great time, in all honesty. But when it came to some of the stuff that happened in the 2010s, yeah, I lost my gran, lost some toxic people in my life, had so much mental health stuff to deal with. Yeah, it was just a very like turbulent decade for everybody, and I feel like we've probably all had our personal baggage to deal with. And yeah, I just think it would be really interesting if there was like a hit song from the 2010s that really encapsulated that feeling where you're coming to terms with your reality, and it just managed to address the isolation and pain and sometimes depression that can accompany that situation. Unfortunately, no such song exists, so this whole tangent's been for nothing. But yeah, I guess thank you for watching. Catch you around.
Ain't it fun living in every world? Ain't it good being all alone?
There's something so poetic about my personal rambling mirroring the same predicament Paramore found themselves struggling with. Having had a hugely successful run of singles and albums in the late 90s, 2010 saw Farrell Brothers, Sack and Josh part ways with the band. In addition to that, frontwoman Hayley Williams had just moved to LA in 2013 and was just kind of being brought down to earth. This is what she wrote in a 2013 live journal entry.
Ain't It Fun has everything to do with accepting at some point in your life that the world is not your very own Truman Show. The people who walked past you on the street aren't extras in your movie. This is the real world. This is where everyone's looking out for him or herself and just trying to get through each day and say they did alright. To make it clear, this song is a letter to myself. We all need a kick in the ass sometimes.
And a kick in the ass is what we got, because Under Pressure, this absolute diamond of a song was produced. Full of passive-aggressive and sardonic musings, Hayley Williams proves herself as a lyricist who is naturally capable of tapping into emotions in a relatable way that never veers into being shallow or tepid. Ain't It Fun? Maybe, actually no, it is the best that Hayley Williams has sounded throughout the 16 years that she's been active in music. The chills I get with each iteration of that chorus, she starts to sound more fragile and more worn, like the stress and the reality of the situation is just getting to her as time progresses. Oh, those chills would put my freezer out of a job. On top of all that, the instrumentation itself is absolutely magnificent. The cute glockenspiel and drumming during the verses all act as a perfect foil to the heartache and anger that is bubbling up, leading to that aforementioned chorus packing in the energy of a Doctor Who regeneration. And I find it really neat as the song goes on, the percussion and the choruses are replaced with just some harder hitting guitars. I feel like some folk may not be that hot on the outro here, but I for one welcome our new gospel choir overlords. That genre of music has always been one of hope and perseverance for the toughest of times, and while it may be used to repeat those sarky lyrics, I can't help but feel it does a wonderful job in smoothing the song out with a more hopeful, optimistic tinge. This song came about at a time where like Paramore's situation was starting to look a little bit dire, which in hindsight we know just wasn't really that much to worry about because they've just went from strength to strength. They are probably just as, if not more, formidable than they were at the turn of the decade in a much stronger place. So if I have that in mind, or even just what's like present on the song itself, I just find myself feeling kind of renewed and having this new strength. Like when you, even though I know it's a very sardonic, sarcastic, kind of negative song in a lot of ways, it just makes me feel listened to, makes me feel, yeah, just be energised, and for that, that is why Ain't It Fun is my number one best hit song of the 2010s. And there we have it, the top 21 best hit songs of the 2010s. I know, really weird title, but just ignore that. If you liked the video, then I would really appreciate it if you could give this song a like. This song I like as a video, yep, give this video a like, maybe consider subscribing as well. I'm really chuffed with what I've managed to do here with all the writing I had to put into it and whatnot. Probably going to be my longest video ever, but that's besides the point. I want to know what your lists are, or if you've got like, I don't know, maybe if you didn't like some of the songs that I include on this list, any sort of feedback on the list. I'm always reading those comments. Let me know what you made of it. Links to my Twitter, Instagram and Patreon, which is how you can support the channel and appear on this video somewhere in the credits. They can all be found in the description down below. I will catch you at the end of this month with my last video of 2020. But until then, stay safe, stay hydrated.